This is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org here at Porcfest in New Hampshire. And if you care about your freedom and your privacy, especially online, and the drug war, this video is about you. And to talk about this plus a lot more, we have Ross Ulbricht, who of course is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who was deemed Dread Pirate Roberts of course, the Silk Road. The story and case of Ross is just utterly insane, and there's new developments with a new Supreme Court law that just was decided on that's going to be very important to this case. And Lynn, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, since you're obviously following this case extremely closely, you're filing appeals on this case, is what is the recent Supreme Court case that has an effect on this and of course has an effect on people's privacy?
Yeah, the case is Carpenter versus U.S., and that case basically, the Supreme Court yesterday just ruled in favor of Carpenter, saying it is no longer constitutional for the American government to secretly surveil us, our cell phone activity, our locations, and our records. Because up until now, they have been able to do this without a warrant and track any of us by our cell phones with impunity, with no oversight whatsoever. Now they can't, according to the Supreme Court. And the reason this affects Ross, and they're holding Ross's case, they held it pending this, and we don't know what they're going to decide. But in Ross's case, the question of his Supreme Court petition is that the government now can snoop around and scarf up information through our IP addresses and emails and into our internet browsing activity and history. So they can go into our internet browsing activity and history and learn about our religious interests and affiliations, political affiliations, sexual orientation, medical records, apps, on, and find out all kinds of personal relevant information without a warrant, in secret. And now the questions before them through Ross's case is, well, I don't want them snooping around in mine, but also people need to realize they can use this information to blackmail officials and congresspeople and judges who may be doing something on the internet they don't want everybody to know, for example, or persecute someone in a political group that they don't like, or whatever. And they've been able to do this secretly and without oversight up until now.
This was a very important case, and it was a very close case too. It was a 5-4 decision. It was very narrow, but it sets a very important precedent that hopefully will help affect the appeal of Ross Ulbricht. And what it kind of ruled is that now government officials will need a warrant, so at least there'll be some accountability. The warrant system still needs to be fixed some ways because the government could very easily just get warrants, but at least now there's some accountability, and it's been ruled that it's illegal just to do all this collection and everything else. For the people who don't know Ross and his story, can you tell us about just some of the situations that really are extremely important for this case with the dangerous precedent that they set?
Yeah, well, Ross is a peaceful person. All his charges are nonviolent. No victims came forward at trial to say Ross had harmed them in any way. And he was given a double life sentence plus 40 years. Without parole, by the way. There's no parole in the federal system. That's his whole life. And there were no victims, there was no violence. And some of the precedents that were involved, for instance, the judge sentenced him to life based on a charge, well, it's not a charge, an allegation of murder for hire that was never charged at trial, never set before a jury. The jury never ruled on it. The judge just decided that she just decided to use it. And this is a violation of the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees Americans a jury trial. And it was written to protect the accused from judges like this, and give them the judgment of a jury of their peers. And this is one of the questions before the Supreme Court as well. And there's other precedents. The use of digital evidence in a trial, which can be easily doctored, tampered with, without a trace. The fact that there are corrupt agents who had the run of the site, stole over $1 million, had the ability to commandeer accounts, including the lead account, Dread Pirate Roberts, who was supposedly controlling the site. They had the ability to act as that, and the jury was not allowed to know they existed. And I mean, it just goes on and on. There's a lot on freeross.org about all of the violations and outrages of this case. And for Ross to be given a double life sentence and no one even said they were victimized at trial. No one came forward is outrageous. There was no charge of violence at all.
Yeah, there was a lot of corruption in the case, because I remember, covering the case, and all the newspapers were like murder for hire, murder for hire, murder for hire, and that never even came up in the original prosecution of Ross Ulbricht. And so the media was corrupt in this, the prosecution was corrupt in this, and a double life sentence for running a website. Is a very, very serious sentencing that happened to him, because especially if you look at it from the terms of the double standards that happen in our society, many people use Facebook Messenger or Snapchat or Instagram to buy and sell drugs between each other, which was the major kind of accusation. But those organizations aren't trialed as much as Ross is. And then also there's the kind of big pharma double standard. If you really start looking at things, how they sell opioid medications that are extremely addictive, extremely harmful, but they get away from it because they have big money and big suits and are doing everything that the government has. So there's a lot of double standards. But when it comes to kind of the freedom of the internet, this was really a very, very important case. And can you tell us just about some of the things you've been learning through this whole entire process, and just the way that things are moving forward, especially when it comes to the internet and running websites and online privacy?
Well, I mean, really the overarching thing that I've learned is that, first of all, you can't believe the media. You cannot expect fair treatment from the government. I'm sorry to say that, because I went into this trial thinking, oh, I have, there will be a fair trial. It was not a fair trial. And I've gotten to see how the U.S. criminal justice system operates, and it's appalling. I'm very alarmed by it. I feel like we're all in peril, and there's a reason 98% of people plea instead of going to trial, because they're told they're going to lose, and they probably will, and then they'll get a worse sentence. And so jury trials are becoming extinct, and it's one of the foundational principles of our justice system originally. And I've seen the results of the drug war and mass incarceration, and how devastating it is to families, while not stopping any drug use at all, including they can't even keep drugs out of the prison. So it really doesn't work. And just the horror of this whole thing. And I don't believe the drug war is about drugs, and that's very obvious too. Because if it were, if they wanted to stop drug use, they'd do something that actually worked. But they're making a lot of money and gaining a lot of power and shredding our rights in the process.
Yeah. And especially prosecute the CIA agents who were caught a number of times bringing in cocaine into this country, which is all documented and proven. But one other thing that I really wanted to talk to you about is, how is Ross doing? You're in contact with him. What stages of the appeal? What chances are there? What's going on with Ross right now?
Well, we're waiting for the Supreme Court to decide whether, what they're going to do under this new ruling with Carpenter, and how it'll affect Ross's argument. And they could send it back to the appellate court, the Second Circuit, to reassess under new guidance from the Supreme Court about Ross's evidence, and if that should be allowed. And if it's not allowed, would he get a new trial? And we would like a new trial. We want a fair trial this time, where let the jury know all the truth and not hide it. But Ross is a very strong person. He most of the time stays very positive as well as he can. To be honest, it's tough, and it's relentlessly difficult every single day. He's in a maximum security prison. This is where the Bureau of Prisons put its most violent, with violent gangs, and he's totally peaceful, and doesn't, even the guards have told us that he doesn't belong in there. But that's where he is because of this draconian sentence this judge gave him, which she didn't have to give. She could have given him the mandatory minimum of 20 years, but that wasn't near long enough for her. And so it's tough. I won't say it isn't, but Ross is one of these people. He's very strong. I have moved to be close to him, to give him a lifeline to the real world, the normal world, because guys in there that are just left alone for decades, it's that all they know. It becomes their life, and it's not a good world. So, and other people visit him, care about him, and it's getting him through. But sometimes, to be honest, he has down days, and other days he's fine. He uses his time as constructively as he can. He's very involved in his case, and he meditates. He gets outside as much as possible. He's doing his best, and I'm proud of him for that. But it's tough.
If people want to write Ross or support Ross, where can they do that?
Well, everything's at freeross.org. We're about to put up a very involved and thorough case history that's heavily footnoted that I think anyone interested in the case should read, because it's going to be pretty amazing. And but lots of other information as well, lots of ways to help. Not only monetarily, which we always need, but also other action items. So there's lots of ways to help and stay in touch. So yeah, freeross.org.
Yeah, the cost of appeals and the cost of all the legal stuff is just utterly insane with just how the system works, and just hearing some of the stories is just absolutely shocking. So thank you so much, Ms. Ulbricht, for everything that you're doing, speaking out, standing up and speaking out, and not succumbing to the system and still fighting. So thank you so much for everything. The link to Ross will be in the description below. When you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends and family members. And again, thank you so much for watching Real and Independent Media. Stay tuned for a lot more.